Let's clap. Let's clap. Yes. Yes, finally. A lot of familiar faces I can see in the crowd. A lot of new faces. If I haven't met you before and you want to talk with me afterwards, you know, don't hesitate. Let's share ideas. I will be talking about this kind of strange topic of interviewing people, especially engineers. And before going to this subject, can I probably ask you a few questions? Who have ever conducted a technical interview? For Java? Java? No? Okay. Do you think that all the questions you asked from the candidate were good enough? Have you reflected on your process, on your questions, what kind of answers you got? No? Or have anyone failed the interview? Like, come on, everybody has failed at least once. I did, multiple times. So yeah, my goal today is actually to make you think about the interviews you have failed probably, or the interviews you have conducted, and maybe discuss later on what was wrong or what was right, what could be better in the whole interview process. So let's get started. I have a bunch of random slides and random facts and random ideas in my presentation. If you have any questions, raise the hand. Let's discuss. We can stop at any time. I don't really have a structure, so it's very flexible here. I work for Zero Turnaround, as it was mentioned already. They call me developer advocate. I actually used to be a developer, and I used to be a product manager, and I used to be, I don't know, whoever else. But now I'm my official title is developer advocate. So if you want to know about developer advocacy, probably you can speak to me later as well. Okay, who recognizes this tweet? It was like probably a year ago, maybe more, right? The person who wrote Homebrew, probably every Mac developer actually uses it. This was his actually last tweet. If you go and check, probably he stopped tweeting after this, probably because of the response and public acceptance or public reaction on this. So he said that 90% of our engineers use your software, but you can't invert a binary tree on whiteboard, so get lost. Here's like the context is missing here, right? Inverting a binary tree is not a huge task. It's not a rocket science. I totally believe he can invert the binary tree, but probably there was something else. Either some tricky questions or I don't know, something else. But we get to that a bit later. And there was also a coming out from different people on the internet just recently about the complexity of the interviews or expectations or whatever else. Have you ever been asked like an algorithmic question on the interview? Traverse a binary tree, right? Write a hash map. All those computer science questions. So yeah, if you follow that thread after his tweet, there will be a lot of interesting tweets also afterwards. Also one interesting blog post, why I don't talk to Google developer or Google recruiters. It's not actually about Google recruiters. If you read on, it's about Amazon. Strangely enough, it's only here and here where Google is used, but mostly he rants about Amazon. He rants about the process of interviews, and we get to this just in a moment as well. So how does the process look like normally? Like in Estonia, at least, like our assumption is of a general process of interviews. A nice-looking lady, HR person, gets to you, convinces you to come to the interview, shows off the office, nice kitchen, ping pong table, whatever else, and then she gets you to the meeting room where the two senior developers who don't really care who you are, they don't really care what was the conversation before with the HR person, right? They are not informed. They will just, start asking you the technical questions. Is this the case with you? Have you ever been informed or like instructed by HR person how to conduct the interview? Never, not a single hand. So you see where I'm going. So the person here was currently, he probably expects a nice treatment, but he will not, in most cases, because those guys don't really care. So one thing we should always think about when we interview someone for a technical position is who the person is and why do we actually interview him? Why do we want him in the team? Because in most cases, the HR person told you that, hey, your resume looks awesome. We want you. You're definitely like a part of the team in the future. But those two developers who are interviewing you don't know that, right? They don't care. And in many cases, there is like a small room I made up, 5 minutes. In most cases, you will make your mind about the person in the first 5 minutes of the conversation. And the rest of the interview is basically, you are using it for convincing yourself or like proving yourself being right or wrong. Was it the case? No? No? Yes? Right. Am I right? If I'm not, tell me. Or like, think back. Maybe you didn't think about it, but actually this is how it happens. Like in the first minutes you will actually decide whether you want this person or not. Okay, the kinds of questions.
One, not always.
Not always.
Who said not always?
I did.
Tell us more.
Oh.
Sometimes the person has been to so many interviews that he or she knows really well how to answer this or that or how to make a good impression. So.
Because you have a standard interview.
Huh?
Because you have a standard interview. Because he already knows how to approach the standard interview, right?
I guess so, yeah.
Right. So let's talk about the kinds of questions we probably can relate to. The algorithmic questions I already mentioned, right? Then we have to check if the person actually knows the programming language, right? You probably, if you are looking for a Java developer, probably you would not ask Ruby questions, maybe not. Questions about standard library. Would you ask those actually? Does it make sense? We will get to those later. Then frameworks. Okay, if the person actually used the framework, why not check if he actually knows the deep insides of it? But if he never used it before and he didn't even read about it, does it make him a bad developer? No. And algorithmic questions are, there are two sides of it. Whether you ask those standard ones, write a bubble sort. No, you can actually proceed with a problem solving, which implies developing an algorithm, which is totally fine. It is just your approach to how you structure it and then how you present it how you present the task to the candidate. And there are some other ones that I really like actually myself. System design questions. How would you do something? How would you solve this kind of task, right? Like, I don't know, design a TransferWise system. Why not? General programming questions. I don't really know what kind of those, but those that don't fit any other category basically. And questions about prior experience, those are most relaxing ones. You just basically talk with the person, what kind of tasks he did, what kind of problems he solved, what did he use before, and so on. But that only works with those who have the experience, right? If he doesn't have the experience or he can't share it, then it just doesn't work. Let's start with the first group. Those are like simple ones, but let's check if you can actually relate yourself to those. So the binary tree, remember that tree? So what's the binary tree? We have some kind of a tree, right? Which is supposedly a binary tree, and the point is to invert it so that you invert the nodes inside the tree recursively or not. How would you go about it? Is it like a simple solution? How many lines of code you expect it to be in Java? 15? 10, 15? Okay, we know this, like it's not 100 lines anyway. So if you want, you can go and play at the lead code. There is like this, after this tree, they added this problem there, and here's the initial data that is given to you. There is like a tree node, basically representing the node in the tree. There you have 2 leaves and the value inside the tree node, so that you can check if you actually inverted it or not. And they give you this kind of a template where you have to write the code. So, well, the solution is not hard. You just check for the node if it's a null, like, and then you just invert recursively. What is the problem with this kind of solution? Come on.
They're not Java developers.
You don't even have to be a Java developer to say that there is a problem.
Stack Overflow.
Yes, Stack Overflow. You know, you see there are steps already, right? So we have this first initial solution that is, you know, intuitive, easy to implement, easy to read, easy to understand, but there is a problem with it, and we can proceed, you know, solving this problem step by step, improving it. Of course, there is like a better solution, which is the without recursion, right? We don't go into there, but it doesn't take a lot of code to write. So probably that tweet is about something else. It's not about him not being able to implement the algorithm. There was something else. Either it was, I don't know, huge tree which had to be traversed in like minimal time, or whatever. We don't have the context, so we can't actually judge him by that tweet that he is not capable of programming or anything. So there are other types of questions, like standard ones, reverse a string, or find all the permutations of the string. They all would not take a lot of code to implement. Basically, what they check is that you can actually write code, nothing else. They don't even check if you can think. They basically can, you know, check whether you can type. Okay, that one is a little bit more, you know, advanced. You have to kind of estimate time and space complexity of the algorithm. If you have learned at the computer science class, then probably you just know it by heart. Maybe not. Or, you know, there is also like one opinion about this. If the person knows how to do this, he was just well prepared for the interview. Those questions don't show if the person can think. So we actually, if we want to give him to implement an algorithm at the interview, we should actually think whether we are checking if he is prepared, or he remembers the school classes, or actually we can take the other approach and somehow change the task and make him think. And by thinking, I mean, for instance, presenting this kind of task to him. So create a function that takes a string as a parameter. This function will return an integer calculated with the number of occurrences of characters in a string used as a parameter. So basically, they give you the formula and say that the result should be the number of A's, number of P's, number of R's, or whatever. So they give you the formula. You get a string, you have to return some kind of a number back. Okay? How would you go about implementing this one?
I would read it like 5 times.
Next.
Then I would still understand it, and I would be like really nervous.
Okay.
Then
No,
the
good, good.
reviewers would assist me with some kind of hints. Then the keyboard doesn't work.
Nice. So there are a lot of open questions actually in this formula. Like for instance, okay, this is just the example that how it should work, right? This I love Java should return -4. But how is this calculated? There are a lot of open questions. Ah, damn it. Okay, so what does it mean? Number of? Have no idea. Is it like a count, or is it like the index inside a string, or what is it? Have to ask. And how to compute this expression? What does the or mean? Is it like a plus, or is it, I don't know, product or anything? So this is the real task at the interview, and I asked my friend who actually, gave it to me, and about those questions like why are you giving this kind of things to the candidates? They cannot really take and implement it. And his reaction was, this is for purpose. The person has to ask that he can think. And thinking meaning is that you ask questions, right? If you don't ask questions, you implement this thing as you wish, then probably you are not no thinking person. You're just a coder. Okay, here's another example of my personal failure, actually. At the corporation of goodness, how's it, right? Google, okay. Find the most relevant combination of search results for 3 words. You're provided with the search results indexes, and now you have to find the most relevant combination. What do you think my reaction was when I was asked to implement this?
Google it.
Well, I was like, I don't understand what you want from me. No. Okay. So the point is that you are provided with this kind of 3 arrays, right? They might be infinite. Those are the indexes of the first word, second word, and the third word inside the text, right? And the most relevant combination means that whatever indexes you pick have the minimal distance from each other, right? So closest to each other, right? So how would you go about, this task now? Now the first question would be, for instance, is that are they sorted? Maybe they are not, right? So here's the first thinking point. Are they sorted? How can I, proceed? Okay, I have one assumption that they are sorted, then probably I can just start from the left and moving to the right. Okay, how do I move? Ah, damn it. Okay, basically the point is that you start with the minimal one. Let's say 2, 6, 7. 2 is the minimal one, so I can shift to the right, to the right, right? So it would be 4, 6, and 7. 4 is still the minimal one. I can still again shift to the right. Then it would be 17, 6, 7. Then I can shift the marker on the right again. But the question will be, when do I stop? Right? So, oops. So when do I stop? When should I stop? And those are all those questions that you as a candidate should ask from the person who interviews you, who has given you the task. This basically is checking for your problem-solving skills. What is funny is that if you are given this kind of task at your normal work, you would immediately start asking those. But when you are at the interview, you just totally forget about that, right? Am I right? Mm-hmm. Nod, right? Nod. Okay. So that was my personal failure, and I still don't know the solution. But I know that why I failed. I didn't ask the right questions. So, no. So, like, here's the thinking part here. If you ask about, implementing simple algorithm at the interview, probably are not doing it right. You're just checking if the person can actually type. He can type everything. I can type 100 characters a minute. Not that it's something worth, but then you better, present him with some kind of a task that actually checks if he can think. And if you are the candidate, and you are provided with a task that you cannot really think how to go about, how to start solving it, remember that you have to ask questions. This will be like a mutual benefit there. Okay, but there is like also one interesting idea, right? You know about Jeff Atwood, coding horror, right? If you don't know, go read his blog. He's awesome. Basically, this fizz-buzz problem, right? If the person can solve it, he's probably is a good coder. We can just hire that person. Seniors cannot solve this task in 10 minutes. Juniors cannot solve this task anyway. So if the person can actually code this at the interview at the whiteboard, you just have to hire that person. That's good enough for most of the companies. Let's start with Java actually. So enough of those algorithms. Classics. Who doesn't know the answer? Why? Tell me why. What do you think it will print? No, that guy. Two. Okay, well, basically this is checking if you know Java or not. You are not a Java developer, right? Excuses. Okay, another one. Can anyone remember about the contract between the Hashcode and EQUOS? Raise your hand if you remember. Did you have to implement it yourself? Did you have to implement the Hashcode yourself, right? Because of Hibernate? Yes. No? 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 Okay. All right.
Will you provide answers for junior Java?
No. No, they have to Google.
Because of coding?
They have to Google. I will not spend time answering those. But yeah, I would like to probably to get an answer for this one.
Java 8? In Java 9?
How is it different from Java 8?
Now you get the questions.
Maybe I just don't know something that is changed between Java 8 and Java 9. Answers. No difference?
Multiple. You can implement multiple interfaces.
I can implement. No, I can extend. Sorry?
You can write methods in abstract class.
I can methods. I can write methods in implementations. I can.
In the interface.
Yes.
In Java 8.
In Java 8.
Yeah, sorry.
Right. So what is the difference in Java 8?
Can you do public private interface? Not yet. In Java 9. Java 9 would have private like that.
No, it's much simpler. In the interfaces, you may have only constants, right? In abstract classes, you may have fields, which are mutable. Okay, is Java pass by reference or pass by value? Good. Why? How's the object passed as a, like? How do you go about passing an object to the method? Ah, good one. Basics. Okay, let's get into the trickier one. Can you write this kind of code? So it has a class foo, a method boo, and inside that method you have a class declaration of bar, and then you do something with it. Does it compile? Yes. How do you know it's compiled?
I saw it a long time ago. It compiles. It was very weird for me.
Okay. Okay, then this is like a normal thing. It's a tricky question at the interview. Does this compile? Is it a valid Java code, right? You may answer yes and no. But let's think what kind of questions I can ask further. Is why would you write this kind of code? Can anyone answer it?
For interviews.
For okay, interviews aside, what kind of code I could write? Why I would write this kind of code?
Annoy your coworkers, maybe.
Hide some implementation.
Sorry?
Hide some implementation details.
Okay, that's probably the most reasonable answer. Okay, but let's go further. What does it compile to? So when you compile it, what is the result? Like, what kind of classes you get? Obviously, there is bytecode, right? You get class files and so on. But what kind of names? What is the name of this class, actually?
Probably $4 sign bar. Something like one in between them.
Yes, a combination of these two. So it's foo $1 bar. Don't ask me why. Okay, this is one of the interesting questions we've been asking at Swedbank. Probably one of the first questions at the test. It's a simple one, right? But amazingly, about 50% of the developers were failing it. This is like a strange thing. I even have a blog post on this if you want to read that further. Like, why is it an awesome interview question? It's an awesome because you can actually, from every keyword, you can actually proceed further. How does it work? Why would you use it? I don't know. Why would you never implement this one? And so on. Right? Okay, let's talk about tricks again. What would it return? What's the answer? 0 or 42? 42. Okay. Still 42. Okay. Nothing. Actually, if you use IntelliJ IDEA, it will warn you about this one, and on previous ones as well, that you shouldn't actually abnormally return from finally blocks. Yeah. So I hope you see where I'm going. It's about just knowing the basics of the language and nuances of the language, and then actually, depending on how you structure your interview, you may go deeper with every question. How does it actually work? But let's talk about singletons. This is also like a very great interview question. I also have a blog post on that. And well, it's also embarrassing to see how people could not write a singleton on whiteboard or paper. It's like very simple code, right? Can anyone actually dictate what should be written there? Let's get to that later. But the classical one. Private constructor, then get instance, right?
Check if not this.
Right. Is it good enough?
No.
Too complex.
Too complex.
Why not create an instance immediately?
Because you want a lazy singleton?
You didn't tell that.
Okay. All right. Maybe there is like it's not thread safe. Why like if you asking this person, he implemented this code first.
If you have it as a static final, then you don't have the thread safe problem.
I'm trying to present you the the process, or like the scenario, how would it look like when you're interviewing this person, and you know, he implemented this, and then you ask, hey, are you sure it's good enough? And he starts thinking, and he probably would do this. Like, this is what I have seen. Okay, you assert him that, hey, your solution is probably not good enough. Probably the next one will be this one. Okay, this is not good enough. This is one of the wrong moves from the candidate to start adding the volatile, because it actually opens such a black hole of questions, you know. He wants to talk about the concurrency. Yes, we don't need to write any concurrent code, but let's talk about that. He probably knows a lot, right? This is how it goes at the interviews. I'm not telling this is like the correct solution, like, or anything. Okay, there is like one pattern how to implement a lazy singleton in a correct way. Okay, talking about singletons, you know this comics? No? Okay, are you sure that there is always one singleton? No? Yes. So if you have multiple class loaders, you probably have a lot of singletons, and this is also embarrassing if you're interviewing some kind of an architect who have written a lot of projects inside WebSphere and whatnot. He still doesn't remember about class loaders. Okay, so we have a singleton. We have we know that the singleton can be instantiated multiple times depending on the existence of the class loaders. But how do you go about serializing a singleton? Did you ever have to? No? Why would you do that? Yes. This is like one question I've heard that was asked from the person at one company here in Estonia. How would you serialize a singleton? Okay, best solution here. That's always serializable. It's okay, it's not lazy, but it provides everything. Okay, then you might upset the interviewer, and he would ask again about volatiles. And okay, my opinion is that you shouldn't ask about volatiles and concurrency questions if you don't have to implement this kind of things in your projects. So here's an interesting one. Also, like a question from Google interview. What would you add to Java? And
dynamic piping.
how would you implement it? Here's the one. Like you may have. It's like an open question, right? You ask a person, what would you add to your favorite language, and then whatever he answers, go about the implementation details, and then you really understand. Does he understand? What is he, aiming for, or like, is it really, worth discussing even? When I was asked about this one, it was the time of Java 6, and we already knew that Project Coin was, upcoming, and all those nice features were being added to Java. And I had one situation where I desperately needed multiple inheritance in Java, just because I could save a lot of code and would not have to write a lot. And so I said that, okay, I want to implement the, multiple inheritance. So we had a long discussion about implementing multiple inheritance on the VM level. Yeah. So the JDK questions. Those are like, okay, if you know the library, if you have programmed enough in Java, you probably just, you know your stuff. But there are tricky ones as well. Okay, this is the standard one. You probably know the difference if you have written concurrency code, or at least if you have read. Or like if you have This is like from the certification, actually. If you are a certified Java developer, you probably know this by heart, or maybe you just don't remember. Weak reference. Does anyone know about it? Did you have to use it? For what? Don't remember anymore. Like, okay, you know that there are other reference types, right? There's phantom references, soft references. I once saw a conversation of two JVM developers, one from Hotspot, one from IBM JVM, and they were arguing about the specification, which reference does what. And basically they resolved the argument by looking at the source code. They didn't remember. This is a simple one. If you are an enterprise developer, you're working with Oracle, you're probably just writing this kind of code every day. But is it worthy actually to ask a person who never wrote a database code? I haven't been writing database code since I joined Zero Turnaround, actually. Just didn't have to work with databases anymore. Do you remember how to implement this one? What is the API there? No? No? Oh, first of all, it's JDBC, right? It's a simple code, but probably you just don't remember it. And is it worth it to actually ask this kind of question at the interview? Probably not. This one is a simple one. Can anyone remember? Silence. Okay. Puzzlers. So those are also like JDK types of questions, but they are puzzlers, and this is like also like, is it right or wrong to ask about those puzzlers? Let's see. So we have a map. Let's have a map of strings, like string and string. It comes from somewhere. It doesn't matter how it's constructed. Then we have another one. Also doesn't matter how it's constructed. And the first one contains those values and keys, and the second one is those values and keys. Then we call a method in Java 8, which is replace all, M1 put, and then we print out the both maps. And the questions are, will the two maps switch after this call? Or will both maps receive the same values as M2? Or as M1? Or it doesn't compile? Any guesses? Let's play the lottery. Let's vote. For the first one, 2, 3. For the second one, no one. For the first one, the third one, sorry. Come on. So everybody's thinking that it doesn't compile?
It's the first one, I think.
Why?
Put returning previous value, maybe.
Okay. Damn it. Okay, they will actually switch. And yes, because this is a new method. This is a new thing, basically, that receives like a functional interface there, and they basically switch, but just for the reason that they have the same keys and same number of entries. If it would be something else, it would not be the right answer. It would be mixed. Okay, system design questions. So how would you go about designing a URL shortener? This is like a type of questions, like open-ended questions, right? You would have a nice discussion about picking the technologies, about system design, how would you go about API design, what kind of database would you use, how do you scale the system, and so on. This is like a perfect one for a seasoned developer, if you know that person is a seasoned developer, and you kind of expect him to be at that level. those questions are probably the best. You would not even, start with those basic ones. He had been programming Java like for 10 years. Who cares if he knows, calling, how to call the procedure? He just can look up with the APIs and so on. How would you design TransferWise? We are at TransferWise. It's the right type of questions here. So, any hands here? How would you go about answering this one? They don't know. There is a person who implemented the first version of it, and he doesn't know. Okay, so there is like a mix of it, what we used at Zero Turnaround. So it's almost like a system design question, but it's also a game. And it involves all kind of questions that I've listed previously. So there is a mobile game that you can either play on your iPhone or iPad. So the point here is that it's a puzzle. And the gameplay is that you push those fur balls like up to each other, and if I push this yellow one up to this red one, the red one flies out and the yellow one stays in, right? And the point of this puzzle is that you would keep only one fur ball at the very last, right? So we gave it to the person, and he was playing, understanding the gameplay, and once he's comfortable, he understands how it works, you ask him, how would you go about implementing this hint button here? Right? This bulb here means you have 2 hints, and the hint means is that you don't know which verbal you should push next. It would hint you, okay, you should push this one or that one, and so on. And let's say we have a requirement that this will be like a web service, and that web service would receive this screenshot. So we make a screenshot, send it to the service, and the service sends the response back that okay, you should push that thing out. So the first stage is about locating those furballs. How would you go about that one? How? Yes, it's agreed, but how do you know, like, this is a green one and this is a green one? Yes, I can, but we would go deeper. How? What kind of APIs would you use? What kind of algorithm maybe you can implement with that? Because I've heard like stories, okay, let's implement a neural network to detect this. That's cool, but that's probably just an overkill. Okay, so we know the positions of those furballs. How would we go about finding the hint, like finding the next step in this game? This is about simple search, right? So we implement the tree. We have like a gameplay tree, and we find the next solution that leads to the successful resolution of this puzzler. It's about those simple algorithms that we had in the beginning of my slides, right? Breadth first, depth first, and basically we provide it with the solution, him with the solution, and then the next step when you are already saying that okay, there will be search. What kind of search doesn't matter. Give you like the solution, and then we say that there's something wrong with this code. Can you actually debug it a little bit and say that what's wrong? Maybe it's too slow, or how can we make it faster? And it already shows how the person can actually get himself familiar with the code, how he navigates inside the IDE. Can he actually use it? Is he actually a developer? Okay, so that was the last example of my presentation. I hope you had like a lot of ideas already for the networking and then for conversations and maybe for questions for me. let's have a summary. So what I think are bad question types. Asking about those computer science questions is not really a nice idea if your task is just about getting the data from the web page to the database. Why would you ask about the, solving search or sort, the bubble sort, implement the bubble sort? Nobody cares. Internals of the JVM, well, if you're really tuning some kind of things inside the JVM, maybe it's a right thing to ask, but in most cases, I don't think many companies actually implement this kind of things. Questions about concurrency, I mentioned it several times. I don't think if you write a concurrent code, maybe it's a good idea, but if you don't, it doesn't show anything. It just can embarrass the person. Puzzlers, if you expect a correct answer to that question, maybe it's just a wrong approach. It's all about the approach, right? So if you see how the person reacts, if he is relaxed and if you don't expect the correct answer, then it's fine. But if you are definitely looking for something correct in the response, then probably it's not a good idea. Okay, the good types of questions. I think algorithms are actually good, for checking if the person has written any code recently or not. Well, if he can type, then yes, he has written some code recently, and we can proceed further. If we really need to tune the JVM and internals, and our project is so sensitive, maybe it's a good idea to ask about those too, but then you probably should check the background of the person. Concurrency question, obviously if you're writing some concurrency code, why not? This is our requirement, but then you should remember who are actually interviewing. Yeah, system design questions, basic programming questions are good types. So why not to use those? And the prior experience is like the best one, I think. But you have to always remember whom do you interview and why, and what are your requirements. In most cases, we actually forget about that and start, playing, I don't know, lottery. Okay, do you know that thing or do you know that thing? No, this is not the right approach. So if you have questions for me, or if you have comments right now, or if you want to chat later, I have my contacts here. Don't hesitate to ping me. Yes.
The initial tweets were referring to Google and big name interviews. Do you know the actual situation in Estonia? I mean, what's the type of interviews companies are doing?
I think also depends on the company. I think in Estonia it's actually much better than in the other parts of the world. So for instance, I have heard a lot of feedback from well, it's better to ask our team leads. One of the team leads is there, but generally it's a lot of rounds. As far as I know, I think it's about 5 rounds, because you would be interviewed by an HR person. Then you would probably talk to the team lead. Then you probably would talk to the team, and so on. I really don't know the process currently. When I was interviewing developers, it was a couple of interviews, one interview with the HR person, one interview with team lead, and that's it. with many technical questions, and one of those is a game.
Well, I have one point to say that sometimes you have to think what is the purpose of a developer. Is developer's job sitting on a bench and answering technical questions to a person who is asking them, or is it the developer's purpose of writing code and developing solutions? Because those are totally different environments when you're working with a team, or you're working alone, or you're answering questions to a person who asks like really awkward questions about the weird language features.
Right, right. That's what I wanted to highlight actually.
Hang on, restart screen sharing.
Yeah.
But what is the best question you've been asked?
Me?
Yeah.
I think that Java. What would you implement in Java, and how?
How you would answer it nowadays?
I would probably pick some other. No, I would not pick the other feature. I would still pick the multiple inheritance because there's something to discuss. It's very easy to say, oh, okay, like at that time it was easy to say I want lambdas to be implemented. You know, it's not a rocket science. But then if you say about something weird thing like multiple inheritance, which is weird to have in Java, then you actually have a room for discussion.
But you can do multiple inheritance.
Yeah, there are a lot of details, right? So multiple inheritance of types was always in Java. Then now we have multiple inheritance of behavior since Java 8, but we still don't have multiple inheritance of state, which is, you know, good thing that we don't have it.
I'm not a developer, so.
Perfect.
The question is, as I see it, the smaller the company, the further away the product is from being building a software tool, the more developers should know about the domain problem. Like for TransferWise, it's about like transferring money. The company I'm working with, it's basically selling electricity and energy, gas. So I see the biggest problem is the communication between the people who want to ask, you know, I need this. And they're not developers, they don't know anything about software. So the communication issue between, you know, whether a developer knows about marketing the product itself, or then how like is built up, or then how the product's market works. How much effort do you put in this in the interview, for example?
I think zero turnaround is not a good example of that, but for instance, TransferWise itself is probably a good example. If you check their advertisement, it will list like product thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Is one of those things, and yes, it's obvious that you need, like, if you have product thinking and you are applying to zero turnaround, maybe you should think about applying to not to a developer position, but a product manager position. Because our product managers are mostly technical. They are, let's say, 50% developers, and since our products are for developers, you need to have this background.
What do you think about homework? Some companies give some task to do at home to you before interview, some give it to you after interview. Like, is it good thing, bad thing?
Well, I think it always depends, right? If the company is a big one and they have a huge flow of the resumes coming in, which is not the case nowadays, but some companies maybe do. Maybe it's a good thing to actually gating. The interview process is actually very expensive. So maybe gating is a good thing. Then you basically gate your interview with the home task, right? Now it depends how you go about it. Some companies do some kind of, you know, automated homeworks, basically in a test form that you fill in the website, and you know, then if you're good enough, then they call you, or they send you some kind of homework with a, you know, with the requirement, and then you spend a few days implementing it, and maybe you send something back. I don't know. Like we used to have it in Swedbank, for instance. I think it worked well. And at that time, we really had a lot of resumes coming in. But I think today it's not the case for like, it's not worthy for any company. All the companies are trying to get more people, and gating the interview process is just,
Isn't that the best way to know if the person can actually write code, not write code on a whiteboard?
it doesn't show anything.
One last question. I would actually like to weigh in on that because my teammate here and I created a test task last July for the company Big Bank, and we have since received, I think, 60 tasks for a back-end developer position and I think 20 for a front-end developer. And we have looked over each and every one, and it is actually a very good measure of someone's skill. Because we let the people pretty much choose whatever they can choose, whatever language, whatever framework. It also gives us a view of what they're comfortable with. It pretty much gives us the interview questions. We don't do technical interviews, we just maybe ask a few things about the implementation, that why did you choose this framework, and why do you think it's good, and why didn't you use all of its features, or stuff like that. Nothing too
That's perfect. That's very nice.
And it really both shows if the person can think as well, because you can see that if they have maybe their code is pretty good, but they haven't really thought about the fact that someone's going to execute it really, and their solution actually doesn't really work. And their code looks nice, but it's not meant to be executed. I mean,
Okay.
that already shows something about a person's.
Probably a copy paste from Stack Overflow or something.
One important thing is that when they're doing this homework, they're doing it in their like own safe environment. And interview is a hostile environment, because you know there is a guy looking at you and judging you. And actually workplace is not hostile environment. It's also like somewhat friendly environment where you're working with a team and your goal is to do work. So some people are not just very good in this hostile environment, and even though they know how to sort binary trees or whatever, they feel just too much overpowered by this interview
Right.
process.
But
They just can't think very straight.
There are also like very different requirements from the homeworks. You said there will be like your example is like about designing some kind of application, right? There are examples of homeworks that ask you to compute something, basically, you know, some very basic code, but basically they expect you to implement it in the simplest way possible, right? So we write some unit tests, and then they basically judge it like this. Is it good enough or not? Or I was once asked to implement a visitor pattern as a homework. What? I then figured that this company has even a framework on patterns, so that was a good thing that I didn't proceed.
I would like to comment one thing,
Yes.
if you don't mind.
Yes.
About homeworks, because I also do a lot of interviews, and I never do homework, and I give it any. And it's because I know quite a lot of developers who don't apply if they say homework. Because they say
homework.
No,
Yeah, it's a bad homework. Ours is amazing.
no. No, it's not about the challenge where people, professional developers, who think that, like, why I should waste my time on doing something for that company? Because,
Agreed.
like,
Yes. Yeah, I don't do also. If you pay me, I will do it.
If it's a good homework, you want to do it.
No, I don't.
No.
I have family, kids.
So
I
you
want
can
to-
be really like proud of your homework.
Yeah. I can tell you it's nice.
At the
but-
same time,
Okay, I think we should move the discussion to like outside, and let's stop here. And if you want to ask something from me, you know, you have my contacts. And